What's up, world? Welcome back. Issue 17 for the love of the game, acquiring and operating Micro SaaS. As your gracious host, Kjael, I'm riding Dolo today, and that is in reflection to a little bit of a change up in the programming. So obviously we're experimenting, right? And we're trying to improve iteratively. And I guess the first intent was to break the issues up into 4 parts so that we could dive a little bit deeper, but I think more importantly, make the content more consistent and digestible. So we pivoted towards, an episode every Saturday and touching on one component of the issue. So we did deal teardowns into operating concepts, into OKR teardowns, and then we were doing portfolio performance wraps. The only challenge is that our portfolio performance cadence, or our sprint cadences are on 6 weeks, and we're going to be pivoting to quarters here shortly for our solo portfolio company. So with that, we're going to start to ship the portfolio performance wraps in accordance with when those actual stretches wrap. So those will be kind of timely delivered separately in kind of its own email. And so with that, we're going to be swapping, you guessed it, Musings back into the mix, which is going to be just a little bit of riffing off the cuff from me about, learning lessons, considerations, just kind of whatever is going on in our world at any given point in time. So to kick us off, we've got habit trading and default no for this episode. So let's jump in. So I would say if there's one thing that I have become or grew to become very, very passionate about, it's surely habits and rituals and formation. And obviously Atomic Habits, what's the other 7 principles of high performer? Like there's 7 habits of high achieving performer. Gosh, I can't believe I'm butchering the title of that book so bad, but anyone who knows the one I'm talking about. And I'm pretty prescriptive, I would say, about the habits that I'm trying to maintain, the habits that I'm trying to install, etc. And if you've been following along for a little while, you'll know that we are also big advocates of finding operating leverage. And so today I'd like to suggest a really solid point of leverage when it comes to creating new habits or terminating bad, toxic habits that are, not in line with your long-term goals and values. And so the headline here is habit trading. And so I guess I would suggest that it's a more efficient path towards self-improvement, achievement, however you want to think about it. A path towards getting where you want to go, and not necessarily said in those exact words, that it's far more efficient to swap out things that you're already doing that maybe you'd like to stop doing for things that you'd like to start doing than it is to start a new habit from a kind of a standing start, or to try and terminate a bad habit cold turkey. Those things are notoriously difficult. And I guess before we even go any further, I think we need to mutually agree that, as I put it concisely at the tail end of this, that habits are super difficult to establish, all the while they are the currency of greatness. So I guess finding cheat codes, or habits are a cheat code, period. And if you can find a cheat code for establishing habits, man, you're starting to stack some high leverage stuff. And that's what it's all about. So to make sure that we're on the same page, I did a quick search and found some pretty outstanding quotes across history that kind of speak to this sentiment or try to articulate this point. So it is, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit. Obviously, that's the OG Aristotle. We've got Stephen Covey with sow a thought, reap an action, sow an action, reap a habit, sow a habit, reap a character, sow a character, reap a destiny. So that one's a little more overarching, but you can tell that the habits translate to character, and character is a good way to kind of achieve a destiny. And then I'll wrap with this. There's a few others, but Robert Collier's success is the sum of small efforts repeated day in and day out. I was trying to dig up what is a much more entertaining version of that, but it's like extraordinary long-term achievement is a function of like totally boring, small, daily, consistent activity. So some different ways to think about it, etc. So here we are, we agree, habits are the name of the game. There's so much good stuff from Atomic Habits, but my all-time favorite, I find myself saying this all the time, I've probably said it on this pod 100 times, is we don't rise to our goals, or we don't rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems. And so, I guess that's all good and well, right? I think the challenge is that it's still really, really hard to make change, and that human beings, we are totally like creatures of, I would say, habit. That's a little circular. I would like to argue and said that we're just like we're inertia. We're creatures of inertia, and if you kind of think about the degree of difficulty to change our behavior, to change our thought patterns, to change our belief systems, et cetera, it's a lot of effort. And I know hard is subjective, so we could just put it simply that they say it takes 70 days to form a new habit. So that's long, right? Anything in our world that's longer than a month, we're like, shit. It's like, getting fit's going to take me longer than a month. There's no magic pill to get me to where I want to go. So 70 days is tricky. And then I think the other kind of challenge is that, and as I had alluded to, like humans, we're creatures of inertia, but I think Thinking Fast, there's a ton of books around this, but Thinking Fast and Slow is so good. And they talk about the two thinking systems. System one is fast, automatic, subconscious. Thinking system two is deliberate, kind of methodical, et cetera, basically the opposite. And the vast majority of our waking hours, we're living in system one, whereas basically not a ton of awareness in what we're doing. Like, when's the last time you were thinking about brushing your teeth while you were brushing your teeth? Or when's the last time you thought about, which pocket your keys are in, right? It's that kind of stuff that is, here's the beauty of it, is that once you install that kind of programming, if it's intentional, a lot of your shit is just running without you thinking about it, and it's in line with what you're trying to do and your values and who you're trying to be. So that's when it starts to be very cool. So two challenges: habits are tough, and secondly, they're so ingrained that a lot of times we're not even aware of what our habits are. So, build up. So that's the hook. The build was there, and then let's get to the pay by all means. So, and there's a lot of stuff too. And again, Atomic Habits is basically the Bible on this. But the notion of habit stacking, or just even again back to that concept of inertia, right? It's like it's far easy to begin a new habit if you just stack it onto the habits that you already have. So it's like, you want to read 10 pages a day, you should do it in the morning over your morning cup of coffee, because you already wake up and the first thing you do is brew a pot of coffee. So this is a little bit in vein and kind of in the same spirit as that, but something that I would kind of contend, and something that I've been doing, and I guess the whole premise of this conversation here is this notion of trades, strategic trades. So if you think about the stuff that you're already doing, that's kind of already ingrained, and ideally you focus and bring a little more awareness to that conversation on a daily basis, and it's like, ooh, this thing, like there's an opportunity here that I'm not exploiting, or this is a behavior, a thought pattern, et cetera, that isn't necessarily serving me. How could I just do a little swap-a-roo? And it's as simple as that. And so I would argue that profound improvement is a function of making a little trade and seeing it through for a while until you've kind of swapped out negative for positive, and then rinse and repeat. And eventually you've swapped out 3, 4, 5 activities, behaviors, patterns, whatever, that aren't serving you for ones that do, and holy shit, that adds up pretty quick. So to bring this to life, here are some examples. So in the gym, and I think Dan Martell and some others have this premise of like no net new time, or in sales it used to be windshield time, where most of like manager rep 1v1 time, if you're in a field sales role, is when you're driving to prospect meetings. So it's like, how do you make the most out of that time? And obviously you're in the car, you're there for an hour. What does that look like? You might as well make the most of it. So I'm in the gym a lot, and I used to really enjoy leaning into music, like Spotify playlist, my Discovery playlists would come out, et cetera, et cetera. And so recently I've swapped, or this trade, if you will, is I traded my Spotify Discovery playlist for podcasts and books while I'm at the gym. And man, I'm loving it, all about it. I thought it might hurt I thought man, I need music to get pumped up. That's not the case. And the context is the gym, and I'm working out during that period of time no matter what. Another one is YouTube channels, like All In, Latka, Acquire. In the post, I've got some links. We'll include them in the show notes. But I guess it's like intentional content for Netflix, Apple TV, et cetera, where me and my wife joke that half the time you watch Netflix, you're deciding what you want to watch. Or half the time we watch TV now, we're deciding what we want to watch. And it's just sheer like brain drain. There's no productivity coming from that. There's no fulfillment. There's no joy. So just a quick, let's trade it. Boom, let's step into YouTube next time. Instagram for Readwise Reader. This is another club banger. So I won't disclose when I'm most often on Instagram, but it involves a bathroom and, just a simple swap of Instagram for Readwise Reader where you can save documents like you're in Pocket, or you can pipe in all your newsletters and RSS feeds from your inbox, and huge gains there. And then this is the last one. This is kind of philosophical, a little bit fluffy, but late weekend nights for early mornings. Like, I think you can even zoom out to that macro of a posture on this whole thing where it's like, hey, do you want to go out and have drinks and carry on into the evening? And it's like, nah, I'd like to trade that for an early morning. And of course, I have a 1-year-old, so he kind of forced that trade upon me, but man, I'm glad he did. So you can zoom out, you can zoom in, but I would say, in conclusion, we're humans of inertia. Use that inertia and just pull it towards things that you're more jazzed about, and just do these little swaps. And I think it's a hell of a way to create some improvement in your day. All right, so that's trading habits, habit trading, habit trades. Thought for a while about a good one. I've even asked some models for some props on that one. They didn't give me any good ones. All right, so kind of changing gears, and as you'll notice, these are totally related concepts, and we'll kind of get into that. But this notion of default no. So, man, I'm going to get a little vulnerable here, but I am 1,000% a default yes human being. And what does that mean? It's like, hey, Kjael, you want to do X, Y, Z? Like, my inclination is, yes, I'm in. Oh, man, that sounds great. And I don't know, like, I'm obviously an excitable human. I think on the other side of the equation as well, like if I wanted to go and like unpeel the layer, the onion a little bit and get into my psyche, like I think there's a component of, I guess I want to surpass expectations. Like, yes, I'm here. Like, I think there's kind of a part where it's like outperform. And then I think on the other side of the coin, perhaps a little bit of a darker twist on it is like avoiding letting people down. So needless to say, different ways to look at it. But I guess the thing that matters is I'm more inclined to say yes on average. And I have been that way my entire life. In a business context, I guess what is that led to? Honestly, it's like, hey, I'll be there at 6, or even that, right? It's like, oh shit, I got to really hustle to get there at 6. I know that I probably at best case can make 6, and so there's a little bit of like managing expectations that's woven into that, and that's again just kind of in the personal kind of home life element. So you kind of set yourself up for failure, and I know that, but I want to say yes generally, and I want to be involved in things, and I think that you want to put yourself out there, et cetera, et cetera. On the business side, when I especially coming up, I used to really admire people that had their hands in a lot of stuff. It's like, oh yeah, I'm working on this, and I got this other thing, and I got this side hustle, and I got this thing, and I think I moved in line towards that. I think at a kind of primal level, it was also to hedge my risk, right? It was like, hey, if I have all these irons in the fire, it's less likely that one won't hit, right? It's like power law. The challenge is that as an individual human, right, what ends up happening is your performance just diminishes in any kind of given individual work stream. So you kind of just become distracted all the time, etc. And so I think what's happened over time is that my values have shifted, and we could argue that this is a trade, but I think it was more of like an evolution away from admiring people that were busy and that were all over the place and had their hands in a lot of stuff to people that were hyper focused and super disciplined and were performing at an extraordinary rate as a function of deep focus. And there's a lot of people would say that time is your only finite resource, but output is a function of time and against focus, right? So they would also say that kind of focus perhaps is the finite resource, especially in society today where we've got a notification hitting us on 10 devices at any given point in time. So one quote that I wanted to mix in here that I love so much, Bruce Lee is my favorite philosopher, among other things, but he's got, I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times. So generally, I've moved towards, like, there's been a shift in my values system where focus and, I guess it's as pure as that, where I think focus is cool as shit. Cool. So we're on the same page there. So then if I zoom out a little bit, strangely, and it's so funny how connected these two concepts are, but I kind of had this moment of strange awareness, and it was just like, I think somebody asked me to do something, and it was like, yes. And I noticed that in my mind that my default was yes. And then I would kind of go in and find ways to maybe like confirm that I could do it, or maybe subconsciously like find out a way to actually say no after the fact. Like, oh, I looked at the calendar and yeah, I'm jammed up. And so here we go. Here's the tying the two concepts together. I told you it was coming. So the trade that I'm really focused on is swapping default yes for default no. So instead of yes, and let me make sure that I actually can do it, it's like no, but I'll try to see if I can find a way to make it work, if indeed my intention or kind of the thing that I'm trying to do is to make it work. But I start from no in the interest of my time, because I think that at the end, that I guess abundance and achievement, and insert word for what we're trying to achieve in life, is more a function of what we say no to than what we say yes to, because it's what we say no to that provides the guardrails to allow us to fully be present and to totally rip what we've said yes to. So I won't get any more meta than that, but that's the big trade I'm focused on is default yes for default no. And I've got to quote my boy Bruce Lee one last time, and there's another piece here too from Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. I definitely didn't pronounce that right, but that's quite the name. And Bruce Lee's quote is, "It is not daily increase, but daily decrease. Hack away the unessential. Simplicity is the key to brilliance." And then Antoine, who was a French philosopher, said, "Perfection is achieved not when there is nothing more to add, but when there is nothing left to take away." So I think simplicity is mastery. The ruthless pursuit of simplicity is just kind of leads toward a more fulfilling life. I think we'd all agree, and I think default no fits neatly in with that sentiment. And then in the Substack shipping on this weekend, I included, I guess, some perspective from different crafts and different disciplines, ranging from psychology, economics, sociology, and covering kind of the gambit there. But like one simple thing is decision fatigue. So that's another like totally kind of widely acknowledged component. And for those that aren't as familiar, it suggests that every day we're born with X units of decision making. Let's call it 100 units. And for every decision you make, no matter how big or how small, it wears out and your units deplete over the course of the day. And this is why Obama wears blue and gray suits, Zuck wears a black shirt every day. They're like, hey, I need to remove as many inconsequential decisions as humanly possible so that I can save that muscle for the decisions that matter. So saying no is an easy way to kind of avoid decision fatigue. And then another one, and then it goes into, one quote too is like 10,000 hours to achieve mastery. I think that's kind of a fluffy stat, but obviously the more you say no to, the more likely you are to achieve 10,000 hours in anything. Economics, I think this ultimately plays into opportunity cost, and that is that, I guess what you say yes to it costs you the opportunity to say yes to other stuff. It's not so much a loss that like, hey, I said yes to this and I don't really have much to show for it. It's like, yeah, you said yes to this thing, and the time and energy you invested in that you could have deployed elsewhere. So it's a much kind of more meaningful loss than you think. And I'll leave it at that. So a little blabbery. This is kind of a strange format, I guess, for me. I'll be getting used to it. So hopefully we get better in subsequent episodes. And, I think this is kind of just a real look into my head and how we're going through stuff. So hopefully this was interesting. Hopefully this was useful. Holler in the comments, more, less. You let us know. It's all about you all and providing the content that I guess we're uniquely positioned to share, such that you can get on this acquire and operate path and create, kind of a life that is fulfilling to you and financial freedom and all that good stuff without following kind of the conventional corporate path or a high risk kind of venture approach, or getting in and being kind of an operator for capital partners and doing a lot of work and maybe not being super thrilled about the economics. So I'll leave it at that. We'll see you next week for the love of the game. Yeah.